Hello, everyone. In this video, I want to focus a bit around this sentence that says, withhold from trying to solve your client's problem, which may lift off, if I may say so, some of the professional worries, especially, as we are in this change work industry. And speaking of change, not just any kind of change, but a fast and thorough change. So hearing this could elicit a bit of a confusion in people's mind, and more so when a therapist just starts out and tries really hard to think of or solve the intricacies that may happen internally for someone, or over analyzing the client's problem and all the possible solutions, overthinking about what to say in case this happens or that happens, and all these kind of stuff. So my intention is to break down this sentence, which is actually not just a sentence or a saying, but a very important principle in OCH, so that the organic conversation in hypnotherapy rely on, and accordingly, it does not apply to only to the session, but also to the practitioner and overall to everyone and everything that is happening in the session. Let me explain. So, because not trying too hard by all means applies to the phenomena that's occurring during a session, like deep realizations, for example, they come about when the topic is switched. It applies to the client because once the chattering mind, let's use that word, slows down or subsides, the person starts having better ideas, or even resolutions or resources that turn to solutions later on about the client's real problem. Also apply to the therapist, because not trying will take off the pressure from the therapist, and they will naturally be more curious and to the point with their questions. Now, since we talk about hypnotherapy, let me explain what I mean with to the point with their questions, as it can also confuse the practitioners, because we also say there's no right or wrong questions. So in this context, with questions to the point, I mean two things. So the right question at the right time. And in hypnotherapy, it should mean ask a question related to what the client gives you. Also by recognizing if what they say is more of a conscious information or not. For example, when the client is sharing an information that they are not that much aware of what they're saying, you do not change the subject unless that's something you intentionally do and intend to come back to it later on. But this is really a very advanced approach or mastery level, so we'll leave that for another time. So when a client expresses some kind of information that they are not that much aware of, you ask related questions at that time to that information, but with the least amount of words. So sticking to that what is obvious to you, but not the obvious to the client. And the second, if in the beginning of the session, when a client has just shared or is starting sharing what's at their best awareness now, what they think their problem is, we do not ask solution-based questions at that moment. So again, at the right time. That's also one of those times, for example, when a lot of I don't knows occur, but the client is not yet at that place where that will be a gate to more possibilities or even all possibilities, as they still haven't slowed down from their usual pace, so everyday pace. And of course, according to this principle, non-solution based questions are important also because solution based questions are most of the time coming from the solutions based on the theories that we have learned. Not saying here that they do not help in having a glance of a bigger picture and that are not true at all. But they can also change with time, and solutions, on the other hand, are pretty individual. So it can also happen that we may have overcome a similar situation that the client finds themselves in, and we may base the question on our own experience. And when this is the case, which often is, guess how I know? So because none of us is immune to this, at least you put it out there. So the person in front of you has the choice to say yes or no. It's not like that for me. And other cases may be when we base it on another client's experience, and so on and so forth. So, why is it important, according to this principle, to learn to avoid asking solution based questions? It's because of the fact that we know how problems are created just because of some kind of linear thinking, thinking based on conclusions and beliefs or experiences. So, in the bigger picture, it has a big potential to create a problem, or in the context of a session, it can become an obstacle to the fastest and easiest way to actually solving a problem. Therefore, we do not try to solve a problem. I know it may sound very absurd, but if anything, it is worth thinking about this. So, this principle of not trying to solve a client's problem is what also makes the organic conversations in hypnotherapy a content free, which you might have heard me say it several times. However, it is not context free, because if it was, we couldn't be saying that we meet the client where they are. You see, so the client still brings to the table anything of their concern, but we do not steer their theme where we think it should go. But due to asking a non-solution based questions, we allow for space for them to start seeing and considering different perspectives about that context, which by the end of a session may result to a great resolution. We may take this, let's say, as an inner GPS. And these days, there's something we know about GPSs. Sometimes they need to be updated, and other times just restart. Otherwise, it may send us in many places that will have us do a lot of U turns, and so on and so forth, if this makes sense. So, someone also asked the other day if content free meant we induce a trance state with an induction technique and let the client until the end of the session go anywhere and everywhere, while once they start becoming more aware, we induce the trance all over again and repeat the process a few times without us engaging at all until it exhausts itself. And this person also wondered if that's the fractionation technique, inducing a trance all over again. So, just for clarity purposes only, and then I'll come back to answer this question, if organic conversations in hypnotherapy content free means what I just said. So, a hypnotic fractionation is really a deepener technique, and that is done intentionally to deepen the trance. And when it's done nicely and effectively, it is done smoothly and fast at the same time, several times within seconds. Not after a while, the person has been in trance state and then becomes more aware by themselves. So that was a quick explanation of what that is. Now to come back to the answer. So no, content free is not what's meant with, at least not in the context of the organic conversations in hypnotherapy, because there is still a context and a client's context that throughout a session they become more clear about until relaxation settles in as a byproduct. So that kind of fractionation that I mentioned actually is a hypnotic fractionation. But because in this approach, we are not concerned with the depth of trance, and also due to not using any outside technology, so induction techniques, to elicit an organic trance state, so a natural trance-like state, which our students learn to recognize when it occurs during a session. If we put any attention to a fractionation due to a given context, it is actually more of a therapeutic one. So to deepen the learning process of the client's own solutions throughout a session. In any case, that kind of a content-free hypnosis session that this student mentioned is not that in so many cases does not lead to a solution. However, one can arrive to that place in many ways. And in this case, it's like, you know, enjoying, for example, relaxing in your own garden after you cleaned it from all the weeds. If that's what one likes, probably not the best example, but hope it makes sense. So now, as there are exceptions to almost everything in the organic conversations in hypnotherapy, the only time or few of the times when we engage straight away in a trance-like state is when a person comes readily expressing it. So like when we see someone obviously very nervous or even excited, those moments we recognize, consider, and allow those to be with our utmost care and presence, and continue the conversation part afterwards. So again, we do not disregard them when we follow this principle, like slow down to speed up, or do not try to rush or solve the client's problem. So this was more or less about this principle in this video. You are invited to see for yourself how it works, if you may. And thanks for listening. Keep the good questions coming in my inbox, and see you soon in another video.